So my name is Narendra Patil, and I'm going to be the moderator for this session that is focused on the market segment focus. So we have a fantastic panel here today, and the way we are going to keep this is very interactive because we really want to understand, the questions that come from you and any specific problem you may have about market segmentation and the impact of that on, your targeting, positioning, your go-to-market, and so forth. So what I'm going to do is first, with a quick show of hand, can you raise your hand if you are the classic tech founder who think you have relatively less knowledge of marketing in general? Raise your hand. Okay. So we have about probably 1/3 of the people. Okay, good. So what we'll do is now we will have the introduction of the panel. I'll go last. So we'll start with Miten first.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
Hi, everyone. My name is Mehta. I'm the co-founder of Spinta Global Accelerator. We are headquartered here in Fremont. We also have operations in DC, Bangalore, Singapore, Bangkok, and of course in Fremont. Just announced a cross-border accelerator with India's largest corporate group, Reliance, day before yesterday. And then yesterday, with one of the world's topmost innovative law firm, in fact, Nishit Desai, an associate, the founder is here, Mr. Desai. For accelerator that is going to focus around all the disruptive industries that is going to actually get impacted with the huge change in legal law that's come over. Every time we have seen there's an inflection point in terms of technology disruption, there's always a huge role that law, compliance, and regulation play. They can't keep up. So there's a very special accelerator program that we have just announced with them. Welcome, everyone.
Awesome. Purna.
Hi. My name is Purna Pareek, and I'm the CEO and founder of Finovera. We are a fintech company specializing in bill management and bill payment space, and we primarily sell to banks and credit unions in the United States. I'm a serial entrepreneur, been in fintech for, maybe, almost 15 years now. So been there in a while, gone through some of these marketing issues that we're going to talk about today. Prior to that, I was in a purely technology space, and both my companies got acquired in the past. So we'll be happy to answer your questions later.
Hi, I'm Adithya Padala. I'm kind of non-serial entrepreneur. I've been running the same company 25 years called UmeVoice. I've done lots of things in the same company. First built a business doing speech recognition for trading. My first client was Goldman Sachs, and we were so good 20 years ago. We charged $1 million for 10 users because we were so accurate doing speech recognition for trading. I can talk about that, how we did market segmentation there. Subsequently, we accidentally invented what's now considered the world's best noise-canceling microphone. And we now make a variety of things, of course for speech recognition, but we also, the loudest helicopters of the US Army, the Chinooks, that the Special Forces fly. I was with them last week in Nashville. They use my microphone. And so that's a whole different niche in terms of market segmentation. Anybody who's an executive can use that same technology. It's called the boom. I'm a sailor, so it's not the mast, it's the boom. The other thing, just so you have a sense of, for those of you that are entrepreneurs, early on I raised $20 million, but about a decade ago I divested my company of all debt and investors. So market segmentation and marketing in different markets is easy when you don't have anybody pushing you. You decide what you'd want to do strategically. Be happy. Thank you for letting me talk here.
Thank you. So I would like to tell a story actually. About 20 years ago, I met with Bipin Shah, who was one of the founder of TiE, and I was a techie entrepreneur coming out of Sun Microsystem, and I kind of told him my story. And he said, you gotta think about your market segmentation a little bit. And I was like deer in the headlight, right? I had no clue what he was talking about. So this kind of brings me full circle, because then I went on and actually did several marketing roles in different companies, head of product marketing, CMO, went to a top marketing school in the world, Kellogg Business School, and so forth. So that's kind of my journey. So an engineer actually can become a marketer. So that's what I want to tell. Now what I do is I'm a founder of a startup called StartupWind. It's a specialized social network and equity crowdfunding platform for entrepreneurs and investors from premier schools in the world. So that's what I do. That's the introduction. So what we will do is, if people have questions, they can start lining up here on the left-hand side. In the meantime, I have a couple of warm-up questions for the panel. So, the first question I have is, why mass marketing fails or why care about segmentation, right? And give some examples based upon what you may have seen with other entrepreneurs or your own experiences. What happens when you're not able to identify the right market segment. So we can start from the other end and come this way.
Sure.
Yeah.
So in our opinion, mass marketing fails because when you fail to evolve with your customer needs, with your market needs. I think it's important that when you keep segmenting, and segmenting is not just one time, it's an iterative process. I'll use a real life example of Spinta, the company that I represent. We started out as an accelerator about 2.5 years back, and we were one of the few ones around. And then we soon realized that there are plenty of other accelerators who are coming around, very similar kind of a value prop, and it's hard to differentiate in the marketplace. And hard to differentiate, you can make out when you talk to your customers, and when you see within a blink of an eye, they are not able to go out and resonate or relate with you the way they used to do 2 years back, where they are not able to see the value differentiator that you bring to the table, and hence segmentation. So we actually went out, and I'll use, again, a real-life example of what we just announced yesterday. So we went and spoke to our global mentor board. In fact, Mr. Nishit Desai happens to be on that board. And when we asked him and said, hey, how do we go out and compete? How do we differentiate? How do we make our value proposition more formidable, so that we can continue to go out and serve the customer segments that we serve? He said, what are the challenges they are going to go out and face in future? Think of that. So we said, look, the startups that we served, a lot of them actually come across legal challenges because a lot of them are trying to disrupt their own markets, and when they disrupt, the legal compliance are not able to, of the countries are not able to go out and keep up with them. And he says, there you have the idea. And, guess what? We had Mr. Desai on our mentor board, and they are one of the world's leading law firm. Actually, they pride themselves in research and innovation. So we said, why don't we tie up with you, sir? And we'll go out and launch a program that will focus on some of these cutting-edge technology like blockchain and fintech. There's going to be huge disruption happening. There's going to be a lot of regulatory changes that is going to go out and impact whether it is banking or fintech industry, and we would like to go out and serve them in advance. So that's just one example of how we feel customers and markets need to go out and continue to segment, continue to evolve, to go out and continue to meet or excel the customer needs.
So I would say the main reason why mass marketing fails because people are not focused, and that's the topic of this panel here. I think, how many people here are tech entrepreneurs, pure technology? Most of you? Well, half of it at least. Okay. So those of you have read this book by Jeffrey Moore, The Crossing the Chasm and Inside the Tornado. This is written about 15, 20 years ago, still valid. So if you go through that book, and if you haven't read it, I would highly recommend to you guys that people fail because in the early stage entrepreneur, I assume a lot of your early stage companies rather than late stage companies, you have to cross that chasm. And crossing the chasm requires you to focus on a certain market, a target. Because if you're going to do mass marketing and try to go to everybody, you're going to fail because you have a product which is at early stage, it probably doesn't work as well. You have to customize to everybody's need. If you're in B2B market, if you're in B2C, it's going to be very, very hard because you have to focus on demographics and psychographics, and there are a lot of factors there. So I would say, most people fail. The mass marketing fails because people don't focus on it. Look at Facebook, right? So how did Mark start the company? Well, he was in the Harvard dorm, right? And just selling the concept to students. He didn't go out and try to sell to 1.7 billion people on the planet. He just went to one segmented, which is target, which was focused just for the students. And then he built off of that. Then he went to universities and everything, right? So I think that's why most of the mass marketing fails, because people think they can win the whole, boil the ocean and win the world. Well, that's not going to happen. So.
Sure. What about you?
So I totally agree with Purna, and I'll give you examples of exactly that. Crossing the Chasm, great book. So when we first did technology, being a technologist, we created 20 years ago this great speech recognition software, went to a number of Wall Street firms, one in New York, one in London, one in San Francisco, and one what we thought were 3 great clients. Very quickly we realized there's something totally wrong. Firstly, one was currency trader, one was a bond trader, one was, I think, mortgage-backed securities. Those 3 people don't even talk to each other. So you're talking about narrow, you have to be really, really narrow. So then we figured out, let's just pick one. And we picked equity trading. And then once we became successful in equity trading, we were a small company then, we're still a small company, but then we were really nobody. And I could walk in once we got Goldman Sachs and on their trading floor, I could walk into any trading room anywhere in the world and pick up the phone, and the head trader would talk to me that day because Goldman was a client. And it's because they knew that we succeeded there, and we were so narrow, and we could compellingly tell a story about how we were saving them $1 million every year, or creating that much value. My daughter's there. She's scared of my using the word value, so I'm sorry. But we were creating that much value that we managed to charge $1 million for 10 users 20 years ago. So focus a lot. And one more thing on pricing and how it relates to market segment. When we were initially charging prototypes, we were charging small amounts of money and calling them prototypes. Every prototype we did failed because everyone wants to play with new technology and they buy a prototype. Then we changed the language. We said, no, this is $1 million piece of software for 10 users, but we'll give you a production system if you're number one for $500,000. Everything we started after that succeeded. We didn't have a single failure. So the language changes, the mindset changes, and people believe in you, and you need them to believe in you to go together with you, go through the initial failures, and then succeed together.
Yeah, excellent point. So I'll tell you the story what we had. When we started the journey at StartupWind, and we were looking at the equity crowdfunding market. It's a large emerging market, but we were also seeing a lot of players just coming up and starting their websites, right? So how are we different? So we started talking to people, and one thing we heard across the board is three things we heard from people. One is, we have ideas, but we don't know where to get started. And we talked to a lot of schools, students, as well as alums from the schools, because that's the market we wanted to really look at. Because we felt like, what we heard is getting seed funding is hard, but getting ready for seed funding is harder, right? And so when people said they have idea, but they don't know where to get started, we realized that we have to actually build a network and an ecosystem and an ideation platform after listening to all these people. And initially, we just focused on top 50 schools in US, right? And that's why we were able to then get into Northwestern, Berkeley, Washington, St. Louis. Now we are able to walk into MIT, Harvard, no matter whichever school you're talking about, we're actually able to get in there very, very quickly because we focused on a very, very narrow segment initially, and now slowly we started opening it up. And now what happened is we already built a two-sided market where people are posting ideas and people are giving feedback and helping each other. When that already happens, which is the hardest part, which is building the two-sided network, you can easily now get into the adjacency, which is when we launched the equity crowdfunding. So the next question I have for the panel is, how do you actually identify, what are different characteristics that you look at when you identify a market segment? And once this question is done, we'll also start taking questions from the audience.
Sure. Yeah. So really, kind of keep it simple to what, who, and how. What's your product or service, basically, and who's your both the user and the buyer. Sometimes they could be different, as we know. And how do you plan to monetize and scale? I think if you can address these three things very clearly, which your grandmom, your mom, your sister, whoever basically who's not from that market can understand, then I think you pretty much have done something which, as you know, you will have a market that is highly targeted and focused around that. So, what, who, and how.
I would say, if you're a startup, and especially if you're a Silicon Valley startup with disrupting technology, you really have to focus on the MVP, the minimum viable product that you built. Is it going to be suitable for that selected audience? So, and if it's not, then it's going to be a problem. So I'll give you my example. My current company, we started out with a completely different concept, which doesn't exist. The banks and credit unions don't offer that. So we decided to go to actually the consumers first to understand and test the model. So we launched it as a consumer site, and still is in a way, and then understand and get the consumers through just search engines and not much marketing. Inbound marketing was one thing we did a little bit, but not a whole lot, just to get the consumers to come to us and see their behavior, how they're using it. And based on that, and we built the product because we were sitting in our ivory tower and kind of building this great grandiose plan. This is what people are going to be using. Well, guess what? I think we were wrong at least 50% of the time. And then we tested a little bit more and went to the market and kind of learned a little bit more. Then we went to banks. And they were totally different. They said, well, consumers love simplicity, convenience, control, and all these things. Banks don't give a hoot about that. They look for revenue, engagement, and how do I compete against my the bank across the street. So their criteria was totally different. So you got to keep all that stuff in mind. Who's your target audience? Who you're going to? Is there an intermediary? Is there a distribution channel partner in the middle? What's their interests are? And then is the product can support all these various objectives of different channels and people? I think all these factors have to be thought through. Otherwise, it becomes pretty hard to kind of be successful as a young startup because you don't have resources, you don't have money, you don't have time. Only thing that you got the talent.
Yeah, Adithya.
So one thing I agree totally with Purna is disruption. If you're really doing something new, you have to disrupt something that was there. So pick and choose something that is a clear differentiator. The benefit of the disruption should at least be a 10x benefit. So I'll switch to another market segment we've been very successful at now. So when we knew we had this dramatic noise-canceling microphone that got accidentally invented, and we decided to go to the military. I also grew up, my dad was in the Indian Air Force, so I knew a little bit about it. So I said, let me go to the easiest place in the military, the ground forces, where there's no bureaucracy, there's a lot of noise, we can change the microphone on the ground. So we focused, rather than building all kinds of stuff, we said, where's the maximum value? Just let's look at everything and change only one piece that'll fit everything. So we found the microphone, changed the microphone on the most standard David Clark headsets, and we decided to go the easiest way where there's no bureaucracy, and we started with the flight lines, what are called the flight lines. Then very quickly the pilots, we started with the Air Force, and then the pilots found out, they started flying with it. And when they started flying with it, you need what is called an AWR, an airworthiness response, to fly with it. They didn't have it, so their hands were slapped. Meantime, the Army found out, and the Special Operations Command of the Army always buys the best, and nobody slaps their hands, so they started flying with it. All I'm doing here is I'm listening with my ears close to the ground and sending emails saying, hey, Air Force started with it, you guys in the Army have it. So then the Air Force guys go and say, hey, we better fight internally. So we don't spend resources. They fought internally to get the mic. Then I tell the Army, hey, U.S. Army, U.S. Special Forces have it, but why doesn't the big Army have it? And they did their own fighting, so I didn't have to put resources. And by being able to focus so narrowly and communicate, all I was communicating is that the benefits were so large. We were saving lives. We were making flights more productive. We were making significant improvements in terms of capital resources in certain situations. And that's all I was communicating, and it makes your communication easier, it makes the whole process easier. So go narrow, make sure you disrupt, so nobody else can come in and play. And now, 10 years since we started that process, we ship thousands of microphones to the military.
Yeah, I will just unpack a little bit more and expand on what each one of you have said in terms of focus and who, what, and how, right? So one thing when you're starting to look at the segments that you want to target, you're actually going to look at two things: is it actionable, and is it meaningful, right? So what is meant by actionable? Is the segment identifiable, right? For example, if we would have said we want to go after every single college or university in the United States, that's not actionable. That's not identifiable. That's not also reachable. Very, very expensive to reach that market, right? Then is this large enough market where I can have a viable business, right? Is this large enough market? Is this profitable market? How is the competition stacking up, right, in this particular market? So I would look at all these things as a marketer and then say, okay, this segment makes sense for me. So that's the actionable part. The meaningful part is, are these group of people have the same sort of problems, or do they value the same sort of attributes or characteristics? So that's kind of the second thing I would look for when I'm actually defining my segment that I want to go for. So that's how I kind of, close that out.
I'm Surya, founder and CEO of Sirab Technologies, which is a startup focused on enabling technologies for automated driving. As a technology founder, typically, most important thing is your vision, and you're trying to solve a pain point. At early stages, you're also looking to kind of bring in a marketing person, like a lot of people are suggesting. Marketing is such a varied field. For instance, marketing an Airbus A380 is way different from marketing a web app, and finding the right kind of a fit even for a marketing person at early stage, so that you don't dilute the vision so much, is very important for startup founder. Any suggestions on how you can go about, finding the right fit for your marketing person, like who you want to pick up as a co-founder or a team member at early stages?
Who want to take that?
Well, I mean, first of all, you want to be, you want to bring in a person who actually knows something about your business a little bit, at least, secondary part of the market, right? If you bring in somebody who, from a, B2C app and you're trying to sell to enterprise, then obviously that's not going to work, right? So those are the basic stuff. But other than that, I would say just go for somebody who is, and it also depends on your stage, right? Do you want to bring a senior person or you want a junior person, So,
typically, like, I'm bent towards finding somebody who has an engineering background, but I mean, do you think that should not be the criteria, or any opinions on that? Like,
if you're selling to engineers or the decision makers, or at least the early part of that are going to be, tech guys,
Exactly.
then it probably be helpful to have some engineering background. Otherwise, you don't speak the lingo, then they're not going to listen to you. You get the message has to resonate, and these people have to communicate that message to the buyer. Otherwise, it'll be pretty difficult to get to the second level.
Yeah, so I have a slightly different take on that one. So what you would really want is somebody who would understand the market and the customer really, really well, and talk to them in that language, listen and observe, right? And really able to find out both the articulated and unarticulated need. Because if you and somebody else just go and talk to the same customer, you will hear the same thing, which is the articulated need. And guess what? You will end up building similar products, which are me too. You want somebody who can go deep, not just bring the symptoms back, but really go deep, ask why 5 times, and identify that unarticulated need so that you can then build a differentiated product. So, as long as that person can become or is a market expert, that brings tremendous value to you. Don't worry about your vision being changed or not. Ultimately, you want to build a successful company. What you really want to learn through this person along with him or her is really understand the market and the customer really, really well.
So yeah, I'd go along with. In fact, today we started from Sonoma, and we left early, and 80% of my drive was automated. I hardly drove, and so I really think it's important that what you plan to deliver today will change drastically by the time you deliver it. So in your marketing.
drive, 80% drive is way different from 100% drive. Like,
Right, no, I appreciate that. No, but what I'm saying is, all I'm saying is, yeah, I agree with that. But all I'm saying is what you're trying to put together in your product is going to change even and evolve. So whoever's in that role has to have their ears to the ground and watch and keep helping you modify things. But I would slightly disagree with Purna. I think marketing has to be less engineering focused, and well, it's a big problem that I think I've seen with many by the way, we've been part of TiE from the start. Many of us that start as engineers do not really listen to customers because we are at the back saying, yeah, but from an engineering point of view, that won't work. And by doing that, we're already failing because we're not truly listening and trying hard to disrupt. So I would actually think that really some of the best marketeers are not engineers. So I don't think it's that important to be an engineer. You should train them to understand the boundaries, but they will train you to stretch your boundaries.
Right. So to Adithya's point, I would say that it depends on your product. He's right, absolutely right. If your product is enterprise software, that supports developers, and you have to have engineering background. If your product is selling your self-driving automation stuff to the development department, you may need engineering background. Otherwise, you won't be able to explain those things. But if you're selling a B2C, obviously there's no reason to have an engineering background.
Sometimes the marketing people look at the guy who cuts a check as a customer, which can be limiting.
Right.
But the person who uses the product is the final customer. The way
right.
I like to look at it.
In my previous company, just to give an example, we were building application server, Java application servers in late 90s, and it was for a developer tool, right? Designed for developers. So the person who was the best salesperson was actually our product manager with a CS degree, and he also worked as a customer support engineer, writing code. So you speak the language, and you can connect with those people who are buyers. So that's different than selling soap. Okay, You don't need to be an engineer. You don't need to know how to, you don't have to be a chemical engineer to sell soap. That's my point. That's an extreme example, but you get the point.
And I think the only different point I would like to add here is, you may not really need a marketing person at the early stage.
Yeah, that's true too.
You actually need more guys who are evangelists, people who are ninjas, who are champions, who are going to go out and, live, breathe, eat, sleep the way you do. And I think marketing as a function probably gets evolved over a period of time. And you probably need somebody who's going to go out and offer or, able to position your product more as somebody who has this as a pain rather than as a vitamin, So early stage companies, they try to go out and solve the vitamin problem rather than the pain problem. So identify those customers for them, which is a pain. And I think no better person to do than the founders themselves. A lot of founders, techie founders, having seen a lot of them in India, they think that marketing is something which is, they just can't get done. Very few successfully are able to do that. I think if you can do that yourself, nobody better than...
To some extent, we'll
Okay.
Yeah, we'll take it off.
Sure.
Hi, I'm Shilpa, founder of Indicus. We have developed an IoT platform which enables others to build applications in hours and days. And we have production implementations in Japan and India. My question is that now that the platform enables others to build applications, system integrators, device vendors, and even the end users like manufacturing industry are our customers. So should we be targeting direct channels or channel partners, or direct marketing or channel partners?
Happy to. So one of the best ways, as you can see, depending on again which target market you're going after, a demographic could be actually going out and conducting hackathon. So let's say IoT, the killer app, one or two identified market, let's say one of them could be healthcare, and I'm just picking this up, but could be different in your case. Going out and conducting hackathons, in target regions, whether it is in India or here in US, and actually going out and saying that we are going to identify top 10 healthcare application built using our IoT API or using our IoT platform. So let 1,000 flower bloom, as they say. Now this is a vicious cycle, as they say. It goes out and it creates across, and especially if you go out and do this in universities, top universities where you will go out and have startups, then this is going to go out and mushroom, right, and build a whole source of open source community who's going to collaborate, innovate, and build products and application service on top of yours. Now this creates indirect revenue channel for you. Granted, it's going to take some time because by the time they go out and build and roll out the apps, but what it does is it creates a very, very strong community around your platform, which is very critical even when you go and talk to your direct customers. The moment you go there and say, by the way, we have got these 50 guys who have built applications or who are building applications on top of it, immediately goes out and gives you credibility over others. That would be my... and the other thing you could do is always work with partners like how we are doing in terms of going out and designing grand challenges. So identify 5 hard problems, the one we are doing with Reliance that we announced earlier. So we went to Reliance, which is India's largest corporate group, one of the Fortune 50 companies, and we said, what are the top 5 problems you're trying to solve in 2017, 2018? Can you go across your business groups? And they came back and they said, these are the 5 things, one in hydrocarbon, one in retail, one in finance. And we said, let's go out and design grand challenges around this and let's roll this out. And let's go out and engage the whole entrepreneurial community and the innovator community, both across universities, across startups, and let them go out and solve this. Let's announce some grand prize around that. And we are just going to go out and do that. So happy to take it offline and see if IoT can be part of it.
We're already doing university alliances for that matter in India. We started with that, and meetups and workshops have also started. But as far as these industrial solutions are concerned, like manufacturing, smart cities, smart spaces, telematics, if we want to target these real business cases, should we be, approaching the direct customers, or should we approach the channel partners, system integrators who are close to the customers? And who know the pain areas already, because for us, inventing each vertical, the platform being horizontal.
So I'll just quickly, sorry, I know I don't want others to, but it's very important to go out and create one of the first few strawman customer cases yourself. I don't think there is any kind of an shortcut. Okay, so once you have that, it's important to focus on those. Assuming, let's say, manufacturing is one, and see, one of the measurable, I think we talked about making it measurable, is the way you out and say how many applications are you enabling, right? Not just customer, but through channel partners. And when you say engaging university, engaging in a meaningful way, as he said, the other point he said, and meaningful way is basically going out and saying, not just going out and doing events and meetups, but actually going out and saying how many of these guys are actually using our platform to build apps, build innovations on top of it, right?
Yeah, and just to add to that, right, in order for you to get traction with the channel partners, again, they would need to see the real use cases and some level of traction and validation. So I think there is no substitute to what Miten has told you. Yeah.
So I run a consulting boutique helping with market segmentation, among other things, for bigger companies, right?
Sure.
So one thing which I missed out, and maybe is the use of data. A lot of you talked about talking to customers, listening, etc., and going and. But one of the things which, at least in the big company world, we find is a lot of data, which is secondary data, a lot of analytics, and most of this group is building big data analytics for other people.
Sure.
So how would you use data in a creative way? Because in startup, you don't have a lot of data, you're doing something new. In all your experiences, how have you used data to really arrive at these conclusions, in addition to listening to customer, obviously, which is important?
Sure. So you're absolutely right. I'll take a first stab at that. You're absolutely right that startups won't have the data, right? And they also won't have the money to really buy these sophisticated marketing tools. Even some of the very mainstream tools like Marketo, we're not going to use that, right? In my startup, I would use MailChimp because it's cheaper, right? So you don't have those tools and you don't have the data, right? So the way you would do that is, one thing to keep in mind is the insights will always come from qualitative conversations, right? Insights will never come from surveys or quantitative stuff, right? So you have to really deeply engage, pretty much do design thinking when you talk to people, right? And unpack. Don't treat the symptom, but really get down to the both articulated and unarticulated needs that are not met. Once you start talking to a bunch of people, let's say about a dozen or more people, what you start realizing is you are identifying patterns. You are identifying patterns and common problems. And the common question that I'm asked usually is, okay, how many you should be talking to? So the relatively simplistic answer is, when you start seeing no new information, you can stop now, right? You pretty much have captured the patterns and you pretty much have captured the insights that come from that. And then what you do is, okay, you know the insight, you have the hypothesis. Now you turn this a little bit data-driven. And the way you do that is then you formulate a survey, right? Because you already got the hypothesis and the insight. You formulate the survey on the basis of that, and you send a survey to a large number of people and then get the validation that it is the problem not just for these set of people, but a large market. So that's how one way I would do it. You guys want to chime in?
Sorry, please. Sorry.
please.
Purna.
Okay. Yeah, please.
All right. So I think, and Narendra is absolutely right. There's no data, right? If you start off, even if you data, you have no idea what to do, because the guy who's actually can use the data, generate the report, he's actually writing code, right? So you take him away from that, you're done. We actually went through a little bit of that. So because we started the B2C, we had a lot of data from users who came in. They added certain accounts. So we captured like how many accounts people were adding, what was the usage model like, what was the engagement like, how many sessions that they had, how much time they spend on each sessions, those kind of metrics that we developed, and what is the average number of bills and dollar amounts and all those things. So it was some interesting data that we collected over time, and from there we could sense. And we could also compare that data with our other customers' data, who was actually paying customers versus non-paying. And we could also relate, people who are using our API, for example, who are actually just using our, the data. We provide the aggregated bills also through an API versus and our UI. We could see the huge difference. The adoption rate for our users who are using our user experience was about 4x better than people just using data and building their own UI. And then so we could take this whole thing and kind of collate and say, where is the hang up? Where was the problem? So we could identify, because of that data, what the problem was. Now on a B2B, I think there's no way. You cannot have enough data. So we had to go and talk to Cities and Bank of America and all these guys, just listen to these guys. But then they could also take you in a different, direction altogether that you didn't expect. So you just listen to all these guys, then you got to think about it, assimilate all this information, and make your own call, essentially. So I'm not sure there's any scientific method to do that, but those some of the experience that we had.
So, sorry, quickly. So at Spinta, we actually have a 3-step process to that. So the whole thing is pretty much like serendipity. I don't think that there is any kind of a, it's more of an art than a science in terms of, going out and finding the early product market fit. But just like how scientists do, right, when they go out and do, so they go out and say whether do the validation of their value fit. Initially in the first step, the 3 steps we have is product market fit, which everybody knows here, I guess, in the room. Second is product market stickiness, in terms of really how sticky the product is. And the third is really product market velocity. And you can measure each one of them. And we do have a platform that enables you for all Spinta startup companies. And we think that once you have identified the fit, once you have established the stickiness, and once you have gone out and positioned yourself from a velocity standpoint, then pretty much you're set overall in terms of scaling.
So I also have an e-commerce site for our consumer products called theboom.com. And over the last decade, when I look at the data on that site, it's almost uncanny that I see certain trends. I can almost a particular month, or what happens on a particular Sunday in March, or a particular month. And it's incredible, actually. I actually think the data that is available for everybody is far more than we realize even in this small case. I think you can actually use that. And I have used that to figure out what we do for market segmentation is based on that we sense, okay, which is another vertical that we can go after. And for the verticals we go after, we jump. We put people on planes. We get them to go to trade shows. Like we're #1 in realtors, for example. Realtors love our technology. They do something completely unique. A realtor buys the boom, takes a client on a visit, and somebody gets a call. They increase the volume in the car. So the client doesn't know what's happening, and he's having another conversation. And then because of that, we found another corollary, another vertical that was similar to them. And so, but we do that by seeing, okay, on the e-commerce, now these guys, there's a whole bunch of these people buying it. So then we think about how, and then we say, okay, this may be, and then we thought the tech guys are a great group. And we went to the Moscone Center once for an Oracle conference. There was a long line to put the free business card in to buy to get a free thing, whereas in the Realtor conference, everybody's with their credit card wanting to buy. So the technologists were not buyers. So it's actually a poor. So the data told us. Data didn't tell us, and we threw money trying to go there, and we lost. So I do think there's a lot of opportunity, actually, even when you're very small, to do market segmentation by paying attention to data, but don't drown in without counter-checking the reality.
My name is Deepak. I'm the co-founder of a small startup. We're building a conversational assistant for healthcare and fitness. So one way to look at it is as a chatbot version of a tracking app like MyFitnessPal, Lark, and so on. So these apps let you enter in information about the foods you eat, the exercises you do. So I had 2 cups of pasta and stuff like that, and it gives you analysis, feedback, lets you track your calories and so on. So we figured it would be a lot more convenient for people if they could speak about what they eat and drink. So for example, all I want to say sometimes is I've been drinking a lot of beer this week, or I've been having my usual lunch and dinner, maybe a little extra fruit and stuff like that. And that actually makes sense because all of this is so vague and imprecise. Nutrition is so imprecise anyway. So my question is, we've built out a product and we're ready to go to market. We're released on the App Store and so on. But so at first we thought, okay, we're just like, we think of ourselves as a V2 or a disruptor of established players like MyFitnessPal and so on. But I'm wondering if our target customers are really people who, people who use existing tracking apps, they only find them useful if they're regular and dedicated and they enter all this information tediously. They do things like, scan barcodes, ask, when they go into restaurants, they try to find out calorie information and so on. We're wondering if our product should be tailored or targeted more towards people someone like me, who cares about nutrition and so on, but I'm not prepared to sit and enter this information every day. So a less rigorous sort of user. Like, does it make sense to try to segment the market that way? Is that even, or is it just, target, like, are we targeting, should we go target MyFitnessPal users directly, or are we looking for, I guess you would call it an adjacent market of people who are nutrition aware but not that intense?
So what I'm hearing is you want us to figure out who is your target segment.
What do you think, right? What is your, how does one go about answering a question like this, which is that
So again, there is no substitute to really talking to the people, showing them what they have, observing people, right? Observing people, what they care, what attributes they care, right? Their lifestyles. I mean, I was in one of the large payroll and benefits apps company, and I took a bunch of my product managers once. They thought we built a great new UI, great new product. I took them to meet a bunch of customers and say, observe first and listen, okay? And then the first thing the payroll administrator is showing is a big calculator, and I asked her, okay, how do you set up your payroll? Show me, right? So first thing you have to do is show me, right? Instead of you telling what I'm selling or what I want to sell you, right? And then this person starts opening a bunch of Excel sheets, starts telling when the deadline from CFO comes, and she needs reports ready and a whole bunch of other stuff. And one thing we all gathered from that entire 1 hour is these people live and die in Excel, okay? Honestly, and our team thought they built a phenomenal UI, and the payroll person was complaining that I'm not able to do tab you do in Excel and move my payroll processing faster, right? So again, there is no substitute to actually spending time observing and talking to people and really unpacking, right? You have to ask why 5 or 6 times, and again, don't ask why, right? Always. Sometimes just stay quiet and people will try to fill the void, right? And speak up. Sometimes you say, tell me more. Sometimes you say, why this is important for you? What's the implication on your business? And these are different ways to really unpack and get to the bottom of what really the insight is or what the need is. And then you will realize who are these people and what are the characteristics or attributes they actually value. Does that help?
Let's do a quick dipstick test right here. How many of the fitness tracking app users over here will switch? You guys understood what it does, right? To a chat-enabled application. Raise your hand. Like I am, and I'll be more than happy because I am lazy to go out and enter this every day. So just do a quick data check over here. Now let's see new users. How many of you who are not using a fitness app just because you know that it's kind of pain in the to go out and use something, enter? How many? Let's see, quick show of hands. So if I were you and I didn't make the count, I'll go out and say, okay, if these are the fitness guys, right, who are already using it, and if I have to switch them, what's going to motivate, incentivize them to go out and switch? Let's say half of them were marathon runners. I don't want to do another show of hands, but assume half of them. Then I would go out and talk to, where are we, in Santa Clara? Let's assume Santa Clara marathon, go out and say, hey, what if I go out and partner with you, give my app, and that's the process. Take those data, distill it down, and then say, that's the target audience I'm going after, and let's say half of the guys from the guys who are marathon runners are going to run for the Santa Clara Marathon. I'm just picking that up, assuming that's the event next year. But that would be the process. I don't think this panel, but that's something you need to do.
I will switch to your app if you can recognize Rasagulla in my accent.
I'm willing to try it right now, actually.
But
we can get chicken pad ki mao, for example.
Okay.
That's what I had for lunch.
I would also look at other fitness apps and look at the Lululemons and some of these guys that are in marketing, health and fitness, yoga mats. Kind of people who are Fitbit, and start out with that and see what kind of demographics or psychographics or behavioral patterns, people would have. Are they millennials? Are they under 20 to 25? Sinks, single income, no kids, dinks, dual income, no kids. They have all this demographic profile, right? Sitcom, single income, 2 kids, oppressed mortgage, whatever, right?
So my startup is like basically I'm at a very, very early stage. So it's based on hardware. So we are still in the prototyping phase. We just still designing it. But our major challenge is if we want to get this hardware design, it will cost us like bulk of money. So what do you recommend? Whether I should take this sample to my client and get their feedback, which I already did, but still they ask me to show the product. Now that product I can just bundle it somehow, my sample, and then again get back to them with the pricing and everything. So do you suggest building that product, like giving also big amount of money, or just bundle up in a sample and then again go back to them with a market cost? So what do you suggest I should do?
I'll take that.
So I actually think clients generally want to solve problems. So if you have a client who's willing to buy your product, take their money, develop the product, and this is what we did. We bootstrap it, and you can actually Again, going back to the book that Purna suggested, you can actually build a really big platform that could be useful to very similar clients. And most clients don't care. They want to solve their problem. And you do that really well, you can replicate that with everyone else. I mean, early on when we charged Goldman Sachs, our first customer, a lot of money, it was very easy for us to get Merrill Lynch and CSFB and all to pay us $1 million each. But what we would do is we would call our platform UmeVoice, and we would write our contracts in a way that anything related to voice recognition belonged to us. So we kept developing and growing our platform. And it didn't matter that each new client meant our core platform that everybody uses is going to get better and better and better. But we were just actually licensing the platform. So how you negotiate that is also crucial. But you should, I would say, it's a lot easier, a lot better to do it with your clients than try to find money from investment. I can say that now because I have nobody's money. But you know, even though another thing I'd like to say to early stage people, even though I raised $20 million from an excellent investor, and I had him for 15 years. Looking back in the 25 years, I wish I hadn't even raised that. I would have rather had no money to start with, because I think my decision-making became much better when I had no money, nobody else's money.
So I can't disagree about taking money from the customer, right? Only thing I would add is, you know, keep it low fidelity as you are actually trying to identify the problem. And define it really, really well. So keep it as low-fi as possible for two reasons. One is your cost of failure is low, number one. Number two, when you show somebody hi-fi stuff, high fidelity, right, they are not going to be honest with you to give you feedback because they know you put a lot of effort into it. If you show them low-fidelity stuff, they will actually rip it apart. And you can tell them, okay, how would you want it? Right? So that's very key. So keep it low fidelity. Initially, you are actually identifying and defining your problem really, really well and getting their input. So you are actually getting a lot of input from them, and then you are building incrementally. Yeah.
I don't think you're selling the product. You're basically gathering the feedback, right? That's what you're going for. If the cost of building a product is $5,000 or something like that, then go for it. By all means, build it out. But you know, if it's going to be, you know, a lot of money, then I wouldn't build it out. I just do a prototype or, you know, mock-up or whatever, and show it to customers. And as they're saying, just kind of get the feedback before I do anything.
Okay, so we are at the hour, pretty much.
Awesome.
So once again, I want to really thank our fantastic panelists here. Give them a big round of applause.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.